Let's start with the, good morning, this is the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission meeting of June the 10th, 2021. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments.
We have no virtual comments. We do have Justin Grabin in the room. I believe he's here for one of the hearings or meetings. Right, Justin?
He's bluegrass, I
Yeah.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Thank you. Yeah, so no public comment for virtual.
Okay. Meeting minute review.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are no extension requests. Updates, legislation and legal matters.
I think that's me. Last month, Planning Commission approved a site plan for Bluegrass Solar with the condition that the applicant discuss the decommissioning surety or the conditions of the decommissioning with staff and myself. You may recall I made something of a crusade of the practice of the applicants proposing decommissioning bonds that are 10% or less of the actual cost of decommissioning, which the Public Service Commission has approved. And you may recall I was particularly concerned about a company that all of these applicants seem to rely upon, that it has been very difficult to verify that it has any presence in the used solar panel market. I've had a number of lengthy conversations with Mr. Mullaney and Ryan Showalter. Mullaney, who's present before you today, the representatives of the applicant. They have introduced me and staff to various other companies around the country that are in the business of both removing abandoned solar facilities and recycling or reselling used solar panels and other components. I will say that it was an education, I think, both for Mr. Mullaney and Mr. Showalter, and certainly myself and the applicant and staff. I appreciate that Bluegrass Solar went out and found the kind of information that we've been looking for years. It does appear that there's a market for used solar panels, particularly in the early years of a solar facility, if it for some reason it needs to be decommissioned.
What about when it has a 20-year life?
Well, explain that
You're
in a
working
minute.
on that.
I'm also, I won't say convinced, but I'm reasonably satisfied that at least in the early years, if something goes wrong or the facility is abandoned for some reason, there will be some powerful influences at play from investors and lenders not to allow the components of a facility to be removed essentially and taken to the dump, taken to Baker's, because of the significant investment and/or secured debt that will be lost if the panels are simply removed from the land and destroyed. At least in the early years. I think that's a compelling argument. I indicated to both staff and counsel for the applicant that the bond that they've proposed would be satisfactory for the first 5 years, plus a cash deposit to the county of $75,000. That $75,000 would be available for the county to use in the event of an abandonment of the facility, mostly for administrative expenses and legal fees to, for example, file something in the circuit court to authorize the county to remove the panels. The county certainly has the authority under the zoning code to enter the property in the event that there's a site plan violation, an abandonment would be. However, I would much prefer that a court authorize the county, once it enters, to effect the removal. There is at least 2 companies that have been identified. They seem to be credible, that are prepared to actually remove panels without any payment from the entity that wants them removed. They, in fact, will pay upfront some money because they see the value of the panels as greater than the cost to remove them. However, to get to that point, we may need to spend some money, the county. Both staff time, an attorney, to get to that point. So the applicant has agreed to deposit $75,000 with the county, which the county would hold in trust, and use under the circumstances that I just described. So I'm satisfied that for the first 5 years. You asked about 20 years. This is all of these surety obligations of a solar facility operator or owner are subject to mandatory review at the Public Service Commission level every 5 years. I think it will be a condition of the county's administrative approval of the bond and the cash deposit that also be reviewed every 5 years, so that as the value of the panels goes down and the likelihood of decommissioning the facility goes up, the amount of surety and or perhaps the amount of a cash deposit will need to go up. If I said the value of the panels goes up, I mean if the value of the panels goes down and the likelihood of abandonment goes up, the surety is going to have to go up because the risk gets higher. But I think we're in good shape for the first 5 years.
So are we assured that something will go up and it'll be taken care of? Who takes care of it?
Okay, ask me that again, please.
Who takes care of the amount of the surety going up?
That would be, we could either bring it back to the Planning Commission or we could have staff do it. In the case of at the Baltimore level, it goes back to the Public Service Commission. It's not a staff.
Well, that should be what we do, right?
Okay.
That
sure.
seems to me that it would be the Public Service Commission rather than us.
No, it's two levels of approval, if that's the right word. Public Service Commission has approved a CPCN. A condition of the CPCN is financial security in the event of decommissioning, to provide a fund for the Public Service Commission to enforce decommissioning at the state level. And here we're seeking financial security to enforce decommissioning at the county level. So we do not necessarily, as I've been crusading for, have to accept what the Public Service Commission has accepted. So if you would prefer that the 5-year review come back to the Planning Commission, I would suggest that somebody make that motion, and that will be a condition of site plan approval, rather than it being done sort of in-house.
Can we do it at this point, right now in the meeting?
I don't hear any objection.
I have a point, if you wouldn't mind. I'm Brendan Mullaney.
They're looking to gift horse in the mouth, so be careful.
I understand. With McAllister, Detar, Showalter, and Walker. I'm local counsel for the developer. We were here before you last month. I would just note that as the project has done with county staff in this process before meeting with you today, what is commonplace for sureties, generally speaking, in the county is that applicants and developers and property owners be able to work with staff and the attorney, Mr. Drummond, to ensure that the surety is proper. It would be irregular for a surety to have to come back in front of the Planning Commission in 5 years, and I would just ask.
We wouldn't expect to see the surety. We expect to see the owner, and we expect them to come back with a reasonable increase in the amount of the surety bond.
So my request is that be handled administratively with the staff and the county attorney, which is what the code.
No, I think it goes on the record if it comes back before the commission. I think it'd be a great idea to come back before the commission. What do you guys say? What do you think?
Every 5 years, they have to go to the PSC. So we're adding a second level of review, if you will, of
Well, the
5
second level
years.
has to be there. That's
Second
what he
level
just said.
here.
But rather than staff, the question is whether it would be just staff or whether it comes before the commission. I think it should come before the commission.
Could it be worked out with staff since all of the nuances and then come here?
Oh, yeah, that's the way it always is.
Yeah, so,
They would bring their proposal to us, and then
Then we would
but
talk
we would
about it.
know
and-
what's going on with it.
Exactly.
I'm fine with that.
You want to make that motion?
Okay, so I will move that upon the 5-year review of the Bluegrass Solar Project, that they, after approval by the Public Service Commission, that they then come before the Planning Commission with regard to the amount of the surety and deposit.
Second?
Second.
Make a suggestion.
Yes, sir.
One of the reasons that we have this dilemma, not just with this project, but with others and in other counties, is that the applicants present and appear and get approval from the Public Service Commission before they bother to discuss it with the county, and then say, well, the Public Service Commission approved this, why won't you? So
You want us to go one step further and have them come here first?
no, not first, but that it happened concurrently. Because otherwise, someone has to be bird dogging the Public Service Commission's filings. Someone has to, around 5 years from now, someone's going to have to, they don't tell us, they go to the Public Service Commission. And so someone's going to have to be checking to be sure what's happening at the Public Service Commission, and if something seems amiss, the county has to intervene in the case at the Public Service Commission. I think that if we could say that the review that is required in 5 years is to occur concurrently with the Public Service Commission review, then an applicant, and I'm not saying Bluegrass Solar would do this, would be at both couldn't go to the Public Service Commission without sort of involving the county, and then and at the end saying, well, you guys didn't object to the Public Service Commission. We got their approval. Why are you being so difficult?
And if they do it concurrently, that's not going to change that.
No, but at least we'll know. And we can, I can tell you the last time I appeared before the Public Service Commission on this issue, the attitude, which was respectful from the Public Service Commission, was essentially, well, we've approved that. I've forgotten which project it was.
You should have been here.
You weren't here. Well, you know, okay. We're not going to change our mind about that one, but we'll give serious thought to your concerns in the future.
Okay.
So you're suggesting a
Can I
friendly
amend it
amendment to the
Yes.
motion?
They have to do it concurrently, that's all.
Amend my motion to read concurrently, please.
Second.
Wait a minute, do you have a,
I do. I just want to make sure that the condition that we received in your decision letter from last month specifically says that we need an approval of the approach that Mr. Drummond's outlined. I just want to make sure that that's on the record as part of this motion and approval today, which is the decommissioning surety as proposed plus the additional $75,000 cash.
well, the 75,000 cash, does that need to be in this one?
Not in this particular motion.
Right. So there isn't any change. Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous staff items.
I have one. I'm Steve Johnson with the Planning Office. You should have a copy of a memorandum regarding the approved project extension requests. During the April 8th, 2021 meeting, the Planning Commission received consensus to discontinue the policy of reviewing project extension requests 6 months after the date of approval. Instead, the Planning Commission decided to move forward following existing regulations found in 18.1-7D, 18.1-154, and 155B, which involve reviewing project extension requests within 2 years of the date of approval. To facilitate this requirement, our office has started keeping an updated spreadsheet of all Planning Commission approvals related to subdivisions and site plans. And it's our intent to provide an update of the approved projects to the Planning Commission and their packets every 6 months in June and December. The first update, going back to July 2020 to May of 2021, this year there were a total of 9 projects. Projects consisted of 2 subdivisions and 7 site plans. Both subdivisions were given approval by the commission, but have not been recorded. Of the 7 site plans approved by the commission, 3 have not been signed by the Planning Commission chair. 1 has been signed by the chair, but no work has begun on the project. And the remaining 3 have been signed by the chair, and building permits have been approved. There is an attached Excel worksheet that shows the status of each project on the back of that memo for your information. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I like the way you put this report together.
Rob did all the hard work.
Did he?
He made it look good.
Good job. Miscellaneous staff items anymore? Amy?
Yes, there's great angst that you did not specifically indicate whether you agree with or approve the surety arrangement that I just discussed. So perhaps if you could indicate that the bond that was proposed plus the $75,000 cash deposit for the purposes that I described is satisfactory to you.
Did you get all that, Sharon? Okay. Want to take that as a motion?
Yes.
Take it as a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we have a second, though?
Second.
Thank you all.
Amended major subdivision, sub number 20-10-0203, Hayden Estates LLC. Well, good morning.
Hopefully this isn't inappropriate. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Get away from him.
Lord knows where you've been.
As stated, we're here for subdivision 20, or application number SUB 20-10-0203 for Hayden Estates LLC. Property is zoned agriculture. The applicant is proposing to amend recorded major subdivision number 020409-003 by modifying the approved landscape buffers. Applicant is requesting relief from planning the required landscape buffers under 18-1-76D. This slide gives you a little bit of a location of where the subdivision is located. It's located to the middle of the county,
Wait
just
a minute, our
south.
monitors are not on. Is there a reason?
User errors?
The top, it's the very more on the left.
Thanks. I'm not finding mine.
That's all right, I got you. That's one TV time.
I don't have a monitor.
Why'd they put you all the way out here? They kicked you out.
Sorry, I can see that.
Everybody on?
Okay. This slide shows you the location of the subdivision. It's located in the central area of the county, just south of Price. A little project history. On March 10th, 2005, there was a planning commission meeting for preliminary planning approval. The planning commission granted preliminary subdivision approval as outlined in application number 020409-003. On July 14th, 2005, there was a planning commission meeting for final subdivision approval. The planning commission granted final subdivision approval as outlined in application number 0204-09-0003. In accordance with section 18-1-76D, a vegetative buffer was proposed along the perimeter of the property line to provide additional protection for the existing and continuing agricultural uses. In addition, the applicant agreed to place mature trees that are 6 to 8 feet in height along the rear property lines of lot 5, 6, and 7. October 17th of 2005, subdivision number 020409-0003 was recorded in the Queen Anne's County Land Records. The landscape buffers are shown on the recorded subdivision plat. October 11th, 2007, there was another planning commission meeting for preliminary plan approval to create an additional 4 ag residential lots using non-contiguous development and reconfigure the agricultural open space. And 1 new public road is phase 2 of the development. The planning commission granted preliminary subdivision approval with the condition that the mature trees are planted along the western property line as outlined in phase 1 prior to final subdivision approval for phase 2. And there are a couple more meetings that occurred that the staff report references, and you can see those in the report. This is a copy of the site plan showing the buffers. The buffers are the kind of those black lines at the top and bottom of your screen. Those are the approved 15-foot wide landscape buffers that are not to be planted. This is the overlay of the site plan from the previous slide. overlaying an aerial. The buffers are shown in blue to the east and west of the property. Natural plant growth is provided, most of the required landscape buffer on the west side of the parcel adjacent to parcel 27. The landscape buffer to the east has not been planted as it's an active agricultural field. Here's some pictures. The black dot down there is where I was standing when I took the pictures, and the arrow is the direction in which the picture was taken. This one was taken from Clark Corner Road, looking north-northeast towards the subdivision. This was taken on Clark Corners Road as well, looking north along the property line. This one was taken on Austin Court inside the subdivision, looking northwest. Same thing here. This one's looking more in a westerly direction towards the landscape buffer on the west side of the property. Same thing here. This is at the end of the cul-de-sac of the subdivision. This is looking south down the property line. The landscape buffer to the east should bisect this field that you're going to see pictures of. This is looking southeast. And then this is looking directly east across the field. The next slide is drone video supplied by Mr. Davis. If you would like to see it, it runs about 4 or 5 minutes. I'll leave that up to you if you want me to play that or not. I think it gives a good idea of what the site looks like. So I guess I'll go ahead and play it for you so you can take a
Existing stormwater management area. And my son was driving this, I wasn't. So the buffer to the east that we're requesting relief from would split the field there to the top right of the screen. And not sure why it was proposed like that, but that was why it was proposed in that location. And it really would bisect that large agricultural field and just make it impractical for Ralph Whaley to till it, and it really serves no purpose. Buffer to the east would bisect that field that was just panned over there. The other area we're requesting relief is on that common property line between Mr. Morris's field and the small remnant ag fields there. That's the camera showing right now. And over time, vegetation has naturally regenerated along the back of most of the lots. And I think Mr. Weiss talked to Mr. Morris, who had some concerns, and that was the specific requirement for lots 5, 6, and 7. And he told Mr. Weiss that Mother Nature is taking care of my concerns. So
there is an attachment in the staff report with letters from citizens. residents there in the subdivision and Mr. Morris.
That's the other stormwater management area there.
And this, the 15-foot wide buffer did run all the way
All the way along that
down
road.
to Clark Corners Road.
As you're looking at this video going back towards Clark Corner Road, the buffer would be along the different field. You can see cornfield on the right, bean field on the left. So it really would put a buffer out in the middle of where the farmers till right up to the common property line currently, so. And it would, you know, cut up these, the smaller bean fields you see right around that house.
That's the end of it. All right, with that, I'd, take any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
Tom Davis with DMS and Associates. I kind of explained our rationale for our request for the relief of the buffers based on the drone video, and there's letters in the folder from the current farmer, Mr. Whaley, who tills the open space, and then the adjacent landowner, Mr. Morris, who had some of the original concerns back in 2005 and 2006. So the request is for relief of those 15-foot buffers, one on the western boundary line, and then the one that bisects the ag field on the east side of the property. So,
Yeah, Jeffrey Thompson. I actually represented the original developer and now Hayden Estates, and we're here with Roger Weiss, who's representative of it. Yeah, Mr. Morris initially, probably the only time I had that happen was, he was very much in favor of having the buffer initially at irrigation, concerned about the adjoining property owners. But kind of the perfect storm, this was approved 05-06. By the time the roads were built, we didn't have any development for a long, long period of time. So as was pointed out, and as you can see on the video, the area did regenerate itself. There have never been any problems. And I know the staff points out that under section 18-1-76D, this buffer is really created for the benefit of the farmer, not for the benefit of the landowners or for the actual lot owners. But I can tell you, I was here not that long ago with Dorsey Patchett, same request, which you did approve. What I'm finding is that the actual lot owners, we've got this open space and they want to be able to enjoy it. So I don't think you're going to hear from any of them because they want it to be open. They don't want to be, kind of.
Well, we have two in the packet besides the farmer that are for the amendment.
Right, and that's what I say. I haven't, as a general matter, I can't say there aren't some out there, but as a general matter, I think people, we create all this open space, they want to enjoy that open space, not be kind of put in a box. If they wanted to be in a wooded lot, I guess they would have picked it, they would have chosen a wooded lot. But Mr. Morris has made a complete, reversal. He's found it hasn't been a problem, and this, of course, this was approved in 05, and we're down the road now.
Right.
There haven't been any problems either with him or on Mr. Whaley's side. And they don't fear, as the statute says, that the adjacent landowners, have some fear of nuisance claims or complaints, and you have to satisfy yourself that that's, not likely. And I think because we've had all this time period pass, I think it's, highly unlikely. So, and that's really the reason we're here.
The other thing, we did send adjacent landowner notifications to all the lot owners in there, and we had heard no objections.
I don't know if Mr. Weiss wants to be heard.
If you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay, any questions from the staff? And not from the staff, I'm sorry, from the commission.
Just a comment, I understand the be impediment to the farmer because of the size of the equipment, because we had a farmer farming our property, a portion of our property for 25 years, and then informed us that he can't because of the size of his equipment. Fortunately, someone else has inherited that, so we don't have to pay to cut all that grass. But I do understand that, especially looking at that video of how they would get the equipment around all those trees and so forth.
Particularly where you put in the full-size trees that have the canopies, and then you
Right.
have these large tractors and combines that then
Right.
can't get under them. And then all of a sudden you've got to do the limbing up, and it's just yeah.
Understood?
So what's the approximate value of that buffer? I don't know.
Bonds are posted and have been maintained, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, bonds are in place.
Bonds have been in place the whole time. But as you might imagine, when the market tanked in '07, a lot of this wasn't done in most subdivisions because, builders and developers were just trying to save themselves. They were more worried about interest carry than put in the landscaping.
That bond does also include street tree planting and entry planting, which we've already done. It was done some time ago.
And that does benefit the subdivision, so.
Yes.
I don't see any downside to it.
Well, it seems to me as if the people would just as soon have the open as to have a buffer, so it's not a requirement.
In the winter, and wildlife and what have you.
I think you're gonna see a number of these for the subdivisions that are still out there, not yet developed. I don't think this is the last one of these requests you're gonna see. So.
Do I get a motion?
Public comment.
Do I hear one?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment. Any public comment?
Not virtually.
Okay. None in the room. Do we have a motion?
Okay, so be it resolved that the Planning Commission regarding the request by Hayden Estates LLC for approval for the modification of 2 landscape buffers, and as more particularly described in the Department of Planning and Zoning file, SUB number 20-10-0203, hereby finds this amendment to the major subdivision is consistent with paragraph 18-1-76D of the Queen Anne's County Zoning and Subdivision Regulations, and hereby grants major subdivision approval subject to the following conditions. Any remaining edits and/or documents required by planning and zoning be reviewed and approved. The applicant submits an amended major subdivision plat for final approval. All required signatures must be obtained. And then I'm going to go ahead and list out the other staff recommendations. The applicant makes a fee in lieu contribution on a per lot basis to the Department of Parks and Recreation. All required bonds, sureties, and inspection fees be submitted. A maintenance and an inspection fee be approved by the Department of Public Works. That's it.
Second.
Second, okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it.
Pleasure seeing everyone again.
Thank you.
Unmasked, I might add.
Right, I want to take a 5-minute break before the Planning Commission annual report.
You're good.
Okay, they're not.
I apologize.
It's okay. Back to order. Excuse me. Back to order, sorry. All right, the meeting's back in session. All right, next on is the Planning Commission approval. Rob Tracy, Senior Planner.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm here today to talk about the 2020 Queen Anne's County.
Can you talk louder?
Is that better, Madam Chair?
Not, no.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here today to talk about the 2020 Queen Anne's County annual report to the Maryland Department of Planning. In accordance with the provisions of the Maryland's land use article, each year the county is required to file an annual report with the Maryland Department of Planning. The goal of this report is to provide the Maryland Department of Planning information regarding development, permitting, and planning-related activities taking place in Queen Anne's County. State regulations require that the Planning Commission approve this document and a copy be filed with the county commissioners. The primary takeaway, just to summarize the report, the primary takeaway of this report is compared to 2018 annual report, illustrates a significant growth, almost 3 times, in new residential permits and small decrease in commercial growth. The number of commercial permits decreased by 12 from the 2018 report, but the total building square footage has increased. Additionally, there was a decrease in total lot area and an increase in floor area. In other words, construction is tending towards larger buildings on smaller lots. Staff would respectfully ask for a motion to accept the annual report, and staff would recommend that.
Any public comment? Any questions from the commission? Can I get a motion to accept the report?
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Once again, nice job.
Thank you.
And we're going to get rid of this stationery.
Yes.
Yes, we have, they aren't the commissioners. Okay. Next on the agenda, county-sponsored text amendment.
Okay.
Rob Tracy again.
Yes, thank you. So this is text amendment 2106, which proposes to add a provision to permit residential accessory structures in the front yards of corner or double frontage lots. The proposed text amendment will streamline the process by eliminating the need for applicants to obtain a variance from the yard locational standards, which can be found in the code 18-145B, prior to building permit approval which is subject to zoning standards. That's zoning setbacks, height standards, et cetera, as outlined in the appropriate zoning district of 18-1. So currently, the code requires all residential structures to be placed in the side or rear yards of a property. A variance can be obtained from the Board of Appeals for a residential accessory structure to be constructed in a front yard of the corner or double frontage lot. A residential accessory structure is an accessory structure on residential lots that is not connected or attached in any manner to existing principal building. For instance, a shed or garage would be considered a residential accessory structure. So the specific text amendment would be added to section 18-145B, which talks about accessory structures and their location restrictions. And the specific text amendment would say, when a property abuts two streets, a residential accessory structure may be located in that portion of the side street that is not within the front yard setback required by this article. So for instance, this is a double frontage lot. The asterisk represents a proposed accessory structure in the front yard of a double frontage lot. In this situation, under the current code, it would require the applicant to go before the Board of Appeals because the structure is in the front yard. The variance process is outlined in the code 18-121, requires that the applicants prove that there is a practical difficulty, unnecessary hardship that was not caused by their actions, is due to a particular feature of the property, that the variance is not contrary to the public interest, and that an evaluation of alternatives proves that the variance is required. So the proposed text amendment would eliminate this and would streamline the process for property owners that are hoping to construct an accessory structure in the front yard of a double frontage or corner lot. So in this instance, if I was a property owner and I came into the Department of Planning for a permit and I wanted to build the structure as where the asterisk is, the department would tell me that I need a variance to put it there. The variance requirements are, like I said and previously, are substantial. So this would streamline that process so I could do a building permit instead of going to the Board of Appeals. So this is a corner lot, and as you can see, the front yard setback is applied to each road. And again, I would be required to get a variance in this instance under the current code because of the location of the structure in the front yard. The proposed text amendment would apply to all zoning districts. In my staff report, Table 1 on page 2 shows the number of variance cases for an accessory structure in the front yard of double frontage or corner lots heard by the Board of Appeals from 2007 to 2021. The years that are omitted from Table 1 are years where no applicants were received. Overall, you can see that the frequency of the Board of Appeals cases has increased over time. The number of cases received from 2007 to 2017 remained constant. However, since 2018, the number of cases has doubled from the number of applications that was received from 2007 to 2017. Last year, 2 cases were considered by the Board of Appeals and both were granted. The Board of Appeals and the zoning administrator, Vivian Swinson, both support the proposed text amendment. The proposed text amendment language, as well as relevant definitions, can be found on page 2 and 3 of my report. The applicable laws, which are stated in Article 29 of the zoning ordinance, are also included. The amendment would also make non-technical changes to the terms of front, side, and rear lots in Article 18.1 in order to make the code more user-friendly. The non-technical revision of these terms does not change their meaning and has no implication on this text amendment. Instead, it is intended to make the terms easier to find within the definition section of the code. In consideration of a text amendment, the Planning Commission should discuss matters required to be considered by the county commissioners, which include consistency with Article 66B of the Annotated Code of Maryland, the comprehensive plan, and Chapter 18.1, which is the zoning ordinance. Based on the consistency with the applicable laws, which can be found on page 3 of my report, the Planning Commission, staff recommends the Planning Commission.
Recorded. The recording has stopped.
User error. We're going to keep that theme up today.
Okay, thank you. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission send a favorable recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for the text amendment to add provisions to 18.145B that will allow residential structures in the front yards of corner lots and double frontage lots, and makes non-technical revisions to the terms of front, side, and rear lots in order to make the code more user-friendly. The non-technical revisions, as I stated before, these terms do not change their meaning and has no implication on the text amendment. Instead, it's intended to make the terms easier to find. Specifically, the recommendation of the Planning Commission should include a discussion of the matters required to be considered by the county commissioners, which includes consistency with Article 66B of the Annotated Code, the comprehensive plan, and Chapter 18. Staff offers a suggested finding that can be found on page 5 of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as Vivian is here as well to answer any questions as well.
Question on, does this open up anything new for having some residential properties converted to commercial? Where they would be putting, let's say, a larger garage, in the front section of the property, where in the past it would have been in the back?
So this would apply to all zoning all zoning districts within the county. So it just depends on, it would have to be a corner lot, and it would have to be a double frontage lot, and the intention is to streamline that process so that applicants don't have to go before the Board of Appeals.
Does this apply to commercial as well as residential, or is it?
It would apply to all zoning districts, but I believe, and I think Vivian may be able to speak a little bit more to whether.
Vivian, you need to.
Good morning, hi.
Good morning, introduce yourself.
Vivian Swinson, zoning administrator. To answer your question.
Can you talk louder?
To answer your question, this would specifically handled with residential structures. There's still a provision in the code that on lots less than 2 acres, accessory buildings can't exceed a percentage of your house. So that wouldn't open that up for you to put a larger building on your property. Okay.
Great, thank you. Right on point.
Any other questions? Public comment? No public comment? Okay, do we have a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission send a favorable recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for text amendment / county ordinance number 21-06 to add to 18.1-45B4 that will allow residential accessory structure in the front yards of corner and double frontage lots, and to make non-technical revisions to paragraph 18 F-1 definitions in order to make the code more user-friendly.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it.
Thank you.
We just had a break, so let's go on with the comprehensive plan workshop, if everybody's in agreement. Walking better every month.
No food or anything. Nope. they're getting set up, I'll get started. Normally, I don't speak during their workshop presentations, but I thought this was a great opportunity, just from a department perspective, to give you some perspective of where we are in this process from the county's eyes, and just to sort of touch base, because we're over the hump of this project review, and ahead of us are probably the most tricky and challenging conversations. So not that every chapter and every section that we've reviewed isn't significant and important, but some of the information that's in that plan is black and white. And we're now branching off into some of the more nuanced conversations. So I just wanted to say that I feel that the commission has been playing its role really well, that our consultants have been upholding their piece, and that staff, who's really acting in a liaison role during this review, we've been kept apprised and have been liaising with all of our stakeholders and are very comfortable with the information that we're getting. But I want to make sure, because we've talked about participation and our roles throughout this process, and I just want to reiterate to you what this update is, as opposed to a full rewrite to the plan, and what that means in terms of the state perspective, because for, I think, all of you on the board, this is your first comprehensive plan update. And the last comprehensive plan update wasn't an update. It was a complete rewrite. So I know that a lot of you are familiar with the citizen committees that were formed, and the great detail that those committees delved into in terms of rewriting that plan. And this feels much different because it is much different. And with some plans that I've been involved with, citizen groups and then the Planning Commission sits at these workshops and they do a line-by-line reading, and they look at every strategy and make comments, and that is what happened last time. So if you are hearing about that experience from citizens and from some former members of the board or whomever you're speaking with, this is very different from that, because we're not doing that. Mainly, they did a lot of the hard work, and a lot of the community has been vested, and I think that there's a general satisfaction with our existing comp plan, which is why we didn't feel the need to do it again. This really is truly an update, and the commissioner's role, as mandated by the state, is they're responsible for the plan. They're responsible to adopt it. It's their document. But they are responsible also to take your recommendation. This board is the drafter, collective drafter of the plan. And so the commissioners hired Wallace Montgomery to draft for you and to form the stakeholder groups that we do have to make sure that we're getting the level of input that we need to do a proper update. Some of that information is very technical that we get from the technical committee. You're going to hear some about that today, but in great detail on the 24th, because our Department of Public Works and Parks and Rec departments and all of the departments have that level of input that we need. So we're looking at our numbers in terms of growth and the amenities that the county physically offers. But we have other stakeholder groups who are vested in how government works and the services that are provided, and those stakeholders have been really vested in our process. So, and really staff isn't a bystander in this process, but in a way, we are more overseeing and making sure that you have the resources, that our consultants have the resources and the connections that they need. So that's all been going very well. If we go to the second slide, it would just note where we are. And we're among 5 counties that are on the same cycle. the comprehensive planning used to be on a 6-year cycle, but legislatively that was changed, and now we're on a 10-year census cycle. We're a little bit ahead of the census, and no county is directly in line with the census, but that was the philosophy when the Department of Planning changed that provision to a 10-year cycle. Plus, it just makes better sense. Sometimes when you're deeply diving into a comp plan, it takes you 7 years to update the plan. So it just didn't make sense to constantly be updating a document and not using it. So we're in line with Baltimore, Caroline, Cecil, and St. Mary. We're on the same schedule. And as you will see, we are leading the charge. So we're right on time. We are, if everything goes according to plan, and I don't see why it wouldn't, we're planning to adopt in the winter. So Baltimore County will be right behind us with the spring adoption. And if this is a contest, this is one I definitely want Queen Anne's County to win. And I think that we will. We also put together some information for you in terms of where we've been, where we are, and what's coming. So you'll see that we've had all of our visioning sessions. We've had 7 special topic sessions. We have 1 more. And because of the COVID restrictions that have been largely lifted, and because of some of the concerns that we've heard from this board, we have liaised with the Farm Bureau especially, but other members of the community to provide an in-person viewing option. We're still having a Zoom interface because we want to be consistent with all of our other special topic sessions, but we'll be hosting an in-person venue that will have a facilitated participation to the Zoom format for those members of the community who don't have access. So there'll be an opportunity to interface, and that will be facilitated with online comments, but also written comments. We've had 7 of our special topic workshops. We've had 8 technical committee meetings, and we have 3 more to wrap up, and that's basically staff level meetings. You've reviewed a lot of drafts so far, and we only have a few more to go, but they're big ones. We're still in the draft stage, in the working draft stage with all of them, but those initial drafts are being buttoned up so that when you get the final draft, they'll be ready for your review based on comments received throughout the process. The working drafts are basically the town planning framework to make sure that we're getting everything we need from the towns and that they have an opportunity to comment all of our community plans, and especially our Kent Narrows community plan. So what's coming? Land use, which includes priority preservation, which is our agricultural component. And then really we're just looking at environmental resources, which we've looked at once, but we're going to look at in greater detail. And then we're at implementation and the appendices. And that's where we really want to streamline this plan, is narrowing down all of those appendices that give us a 1,000-page comprehensive plan. And then it's going to come back to you, all of those pieces that have been not complete drafts that you've looked at because they've been working drafts, that's all going to come back. And you'll have opportunity for comment. Then we have the state review, which is required, which is a 60-day review. And then you're going to be recommending to move on to the county commissioners. So we're looking at, I think it was and ultimately, based on that 60-day review, probably a December adoption. Going to get it in right under the wire, I think. And I just also wanted to give you some level of comfort with the number of participants that we've had. We've had really great participation, and I know I've told you that before, but we have statistics that bear that out. And I want to compare us to larger jurisdictions. So one great example, if you want to switch to the next slide, well, you see that chart ahead of you. Participation isn't spectacular anywhere. But what you'll see is that our percentage based on our population really is outshining our neighbors in Anne Arundel, Calvert, Dorchester, Garrett, Washington County. These are the best statistics we could get. Not every county publishes this kind of information. I think that that's a newer phenomenon, and it's easier to do now than it ever used to be to really quantify numbers. But in quantifying our numbers, we've had greater participation in our surveys, in our visioning workshops, in our special topic workshops. You can see that we're outpacing most of our counterparts. There are some examples, like in Calvert County, they had a little more percentage-wise, but they also had more special topic sessions because they're a much larger community, almost twice our size. So we are doing well, and I wanted to specifically, on the next slide, show you where we're standing with a very similar type of review. Their population is much greater, but Washington County did a very, very similar rollout of basic special topics. They called them stakeholders. For us, they're special topics. And you'll see that for a community of that size, ultimately, all of their efforts brought out 33 participants for their update, and we've had 229. So I just wanted to show you and to give you some verifiable comfort that our outreach efforts have been successful, that our community is as engaged as a community can be in this type of an update, which I've said before isn't always the most exciting. It's exciting to segments of the population who are interested in very specific outcomes, and that's the nature of government, and that's the nature of land use. But all of that input that we're getting has been very important and has been implemented in the drafts that you're seeing. I hope that this exercise is successful enough that when we have to crack this book again in 2031, at which time I hope to be retired, but if I'm not, I'm hoping that we'll be doing another update. And that has a lot to do with the fact that if your community doesn't change significantly, if there aren't large ticket items that need to be addressed, the plan that we have is a good plan. And it could be that we might be in a position for several cycles to do an update. We might be in a position where we need a rewrite. That remains to be seen. But the work we're doing now, I feel, is solid, and it's going to put us in a good position when we have to look at it again.
Good.
So.
Okay, Lauren.
All right. So building on...
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I apologize. Lauren Good with Wallace Montgomery. I'm the project manager.
Can you pull that microphone toward you?
Better?
Well, we'll see.
Is that working? My name is Lauren Good. I'm a project manager with Wallace Montgomery.
I'm Ray Moravec with Wallace Montgomery.
And building on the information that Amy just provided, we wanted to go over some of our more recent outreach efforts since we were last before you. As you've seen, we were planning to have that land use special topic workshop in advance of this meeting, but I think luckily with the shifting of the restrictions, we are able to open that up to include an in-person component. So we have sent out a number of reminders and information about that, and that information, the recap of that will be available for your July meeting. Just timing-wise, we're not sure that we'd be able to compile that summary before your packets would be due for the meeting on the 24th of this month. In the intervening time, we have had 2 additional technical committee meetings with primarily county staff, and that was focused on town planning and community plans. For the community plan option, we did invite members of the Kent Narrows Development Foundation to attend, which they did, so they were able to participate in that discussion. And we also had some members of the Graysonville community present as well, just to give some additional technical input into those sections. Hard copy presentations, social media posts, interviews with staff and stakeholders, many email updates, and then consistently updating that project website to ensure that the most recent and accurate information is available for the public.
Can I just ask, do you have a date set for the land use in-person meeting?
We do. It is scheduled for the 15th, so that would be this coming Tuesday. And we do have I'm sorry, the in-person, yes, the special topic workshop is scheduled for the 15th at 6:30 p.m. And we do have a little bit more information on that when we talk about the next steps.
It's going to be at the Sutherville Volunteer Fire Hall. And we're using the facility there. We'll have access for folks to, Lauren won't be there in person. If you're looking for that personal appearance, I'll be there because Lauren will be giving, this is still going to be a virtual workshop. So Lauren will be participating and giving the whole virtual piece so that everybody can connect as we have with all of the others. But we'll be at the facility to be showing the workshop, making sure that we can get comments from people. We can enter them in the chat and other things as if they were at home, but instead they'll be at the fire department to be able to do that. So we'll facilitate that, make sure we capture, and also giving them an opportunity to provide written comments that we can also take back and combine with comments that are given through the virtual environment. We had the chat boxes, we had the polls. We'll take care of, make sure all that's being done at the in-person location.
Okay, thanks.
And we're still seeing increases to the number of people that are subscribing for our updates, increasing the number of hits to the website. And then we are, depending on the question that is posed, having varying numbers of responses to those questions of the week. So we're very happy with the amount of traffic that we're getting and the substance of the comments that we are receiving throughout these different processes. Are there any questions about any of the outreach components at this point? Okay. All right, so we will go ahead and jump right in. So the first chapter that we're going to be discussing is that on the town planning framework. General contents of this chapter include the guiding principles and legislation, the relationship of county planning and town planning, some town profiles, and then our traditional BMP's tools and techniques and strategies and actions. So we wanted to first start this discussion to really make clear both to the public and then as a reminder what that relationship between county and town planning is. So this, the comprehensive plan for the county is just that. It's a plan that looks at the county, so those unincorporated areas of the county itself. The towns have their own processes where they also develop their own comprehensive plans, and those are often done at on an off cycle from the county plan. But the key issue is that we want to ensure that what occurs in the town plans and what occurs in the county plans are consistent, so that, for example, one town doesn't say, we want to, be 6 times larger than we are right now, and the county say, we think there should be some, agricultural preservation where you're talking about that. So that's just a very over-exaggerated example, but wanting to make sure that there are communication efforts and they are working consistently. This is something that is a requirement, especially when we get into some of the different elements of the plan itself. As part of this section, there's also that discussion about the municipal growth elements. And that is something that the towns generate, but is, again, something that we want to ensure there is some kind of consistency, and that they are tied to other data sources like the water resources element and things that go into those pieces. And of course, tied along with all of these are the municipal annexation and what that means and what the requirements are, or what from a legal standpoint as far as what the state codes require related to those annexations and things of that nature. So we are working to ensure that there is consistency. Many of the I would say the majority of the town plans that were developed were done back in the 2010 era. So again, they are sort of that same age as the existing county plan, and we should see within the next few years those plans begin to be reviewed and updated similarly to this process.
And I'll just add on that, a key part of this is the fact that because we're going through the update now on the county level, that gives the municipalities as well that opportunity to see where the county's focus is. So that continues that coordination and collaboration from those elements.
So did anyone have any comments or questions at this point on that chapter? We are still, as I mentioned, coordinating with the towns, having them review elements and things like that. So we will be incorporating any comments that they have into this draft, as well as any comments that you all may have. Okay, sounds good. All right. The next chapter was related to community plans. And we first wanted to just start with this slide just so that we were clear the planning areas that we were discussing. So the orange color is, of course, the Chester-Stevensville planning area. The red is the Kent Narrows planning area. And then the blue is the Graysonville planning area. In the 2010 plan, all of these were separate standalone plans. And in preparing for this update, a decision was made initially that we wanted to incorporate all three of those plans into the overall county plan. For several reasons, we have since pulled back on the Kent Narrows and are keeping that as a standalone plan. However, we are still referencing high-level information about Kent Narrows in this chapter just to round it out and make it complete.
That's the only one that's going to stay standalone, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So throughout this chapter, we begin again with some of those standard sections that are familiar with all the other chapters, the guiding principles and legislation, any of those best management practices, tools and techniques, and strategies and actions. But where this chapter really differs is we talk about that community planning relationship and how that developed and what that means, gave background information about those community plans and community areas, identified community planning issues, several of which are similar among the three planning areas, and then discussed more in depth about recommendations that stem from those different issues that have been raised. So our intent with this was to, rather than having, an additional, say, 500 to 600 pages of information where a lot of it was similar, showing where those similarities occurred, and then also being able to reference back to other chapters where there are more in-depth conversations about the environment or transportation or community facilities, things like that, so we wouldn't have to repeat the same information in these specific areas. So we may have included specific information about, for example, the critical area in the Chester-Stevensville area or Graysonville or Kent Narrows, but leave the bulk of that discussion in the chapter on the environment. So as you all know, back a decade or more ago, those initial community plans were developed for each of those areas. And similarly to how the overall county's comprehensive plan was developed, there were citizen committees and other groups that really were developed to inform those plans. So we have tried to keep a lot of that information intact and recognizing the vast amount of work that went into these various efforts, and are just trying to, again, combine information where it makes sense, and then update information because it has been, in most cases, at least a 10-year period since those were developed. And really, as far as a general issue or topic for discussion related to these efforts is the current capacity of the sewer treatment system, and what that may mean, and when that may cause limitations in growth. So that is definitely something that comes into play at this community plan level, as well as at a countywide level. And that also has a relationship with limitations that stem from the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. So we are intending to discuss these much more in depth at our meeting later on in this month, because as Amy mentioned, we will have more information from the Public Works Department, and it makes more sense to look at that from a high level and then get down to how it's affecting these planning areas rather than the reverse, so giving you the big picture. So stemming from that information, we will also be having those more pointed discussions in these chapters, but just wanted to make clear we will be discussing them. It's just going to be more of that holistic conversation later on this month. So when we worked with these sections and developed these plans, as you all know, we had the visioning sessions, and each one was not only a session that focused on countywide issues, but then 3 of the visioning sessions had specific discussions on the 3 different planning areas, and as they are formed here. So some of the issues that were really raised there, and then as part of the research and analyses that were performed are shown on the screen here. Some of them are similar. Some of them are issues that are discussed at that countywide level, which makes sense. But these are really the larger issues, or I guess more prominently discussed issues from these areas. So again, in the Chester-Stevensville and Graysonville areas, affordable housing were those were a big topic of discussion at both of those. The traffic related to the Bay Bridge, that's seasonal traffic, and this is the traffic currently, not even thinking about the future and potential additions to the spans or anything like that, but what those implications are, and how that level of traffic is impacting these areas. Another topic that came up, particularly in the Chester-Stevensville area, was that of climate change and sea level rise, and trying to ensure that this area is resilient in the face of those challenges. Due to the fact that this area is surrounded by a lot of water, there are more sensitivities to that and what those impacts may mean. So trying to recognize that and outline some implementation items that can help these areas prepare, become resilient to those challenges in the future. Community connectivity was one of those that were issues raised in both of these planning areas, and that is really the presence or limited presence of bicycle and pedestrian facilities and connections through the northern and southern components of these planning areas, because of course the US 5301 cuts a lot of cuts all three of those planning areas in half, more or less. So how is that community connectivity? What are those implications, and how might those challenges be addressed?
And I will add, that's something that even between the communities was part of that issue as well, not just within the community, but between the communities, which ties to that bigger county picture as well.
Excuse me. So the desire to maintain and enhance community character, so recognizing that these are distinct areas, they do have that the presence of, being in Chester or Stevensville or Graysonville. And I'm not trying to leave out Kent Narrows, but we do have another slide that will come in a moment to discuss that. So we wanted to talk about these two first. So just really making sure that as we move on and as the communities change and grow, or just making sure that that character is recognized and that it doesn't disappear. A big topic of conversation, of course, for this Kent Island area in general, as well as the county overall, is ensuring that there is public access to the water. The county is very fortunate to have, so much water as its neighbor, but making sure that the public is able to access that, and how are people able to get to that access? Does it require a vehicle to get to a parking lot to then access, or are there trails or bike routes or things like that make that access easier? And then sort of building on that community character is wanting a vibrant and walkable downtown area. And how can that be accomplished, particularly with this within this Chester and Stevensville area, because so much development had been focused around 50 and 301. How do we ensure that those, the smaller businesses or smaller, more traditional village-type development continues to be recognized and continues to be successful? Looking at the from the Graysonville side, a lot of those items, work for both of these planning areas. But here again, we're seeing some additional thoughts on the aesthetics of the built environment and wanting to make sure that those continue to positively contribute to the community's character. Really wanting to leverage the public as it travels through this area. So not just ensuring that traffic is able to flow through the area, but how can we incentivize people to say pull off and stop at one of the many businesses and spend money in the county and in Graysonville rather than just driving through to a final destination. So again, that bike ped connectivity is a similar conversation. Here we really saw an even more, stress discussion where many people thought that the character of Graysonville had sort of slowly been being chipped away at just because of a lot of things that have happened with growth and things like that. So really wanting to, again, really reestablish that former character and sense of community and ensure that it's not only reestablished, but continues to be a deep presence within the community. And tied in with a lot of that is the revitalization of Main Street and what that may mean for the community and how those efforts can work hand in hand. And then this was the topic that came up a lot at some of our previous sessions on economic development and things like that. But looking at the workforce that is present, how to have that workforce education piece, workforce development, and link the workforce that is available with the workforce that is needed, and have that sort of come to fruition.
And as you can see, I mean, a lot of that on those pieces do tie to several of the key elements we have for the countywide effort. But as Lauren said, we don't want to truly lose all that by incorporating them in. So there's going to be this, in this chapter, some of that reminder and emphasis so that that's not lost with the inclusion within the overall plan.
So before we move on to the Kent Narrows component, we just wanted to check in. Did you have any comments, questions, or additional thoughts on either this chapter 11, the community plan chapter, or either of these two planning areas specifically?
So I have a comment. First, I want to compliment you on boiling down these discussions that took place, because I was listening in on all of them, and you have a lot of people that have a lot of different thoughts about a lot of different ideas. So I wanted to thank you. When I look at the Graysonville one, because I live in the area, and I've had a few neighbors and people who live there say that the growth that's taking place in the form of the emergency center, the medical pavilion, the assisted living complex, and then the apartments that went up is sort of naturally driving this to a possibility of people who live in the area could work at these places, and how do they get to work? Could they walk? They could take a bike. People who need to access these facilities. So it's an interesting process, and I'm looking more at Graysonville, I guess, because I live near there, but it certainly would be the hope of many people that live there that medical sort of healthcare growth that's taking place specifically there will help drive more affordable housing, redeveloping some of the houses, or anyway. So that's what my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And then again, as I mentioned, this chapter does have highlights from the standalone Kent Narrows plan. So any future revisions to that Kent Narrows plan itself, if needed, will be reflected in the high-level summaries that are in Chapter 11 of the county plan. So moving on to the discussion about the Kent Narrows community plan. We have, when developing this standalone plan, we've wanted to try to balance the fact that it is related to that countywide effort, the countywide plan. They're both going on simultaneously, but then also recognize that this is a standalone, this is a standalone document. So we are trying to mirror some of the components from the county comprehensive plan with this community plan, just to ensure that similar look, feeling, and content. But as we have worked to develop this, we didn't want to take away from the Kent Narrows plan that is currently in place. So the format and the table of contents, if you will, are very similarly structured to how they are currently. So we have, again, looked at these and included those guiding principles and legislation, an overview of the planning process, both how the plan, the original plan came to be, but then what this current process has looked like and how it connects back to the overall county plan. And then there are 3 distinct sections, one on the community profile, which is sort of that background existing conditions information, that middle section, which is really discussing those community planning issues, and then the final section, which discusses more of the recommendations that are stemming from this overall analysis. So as we move through this, we wanted to just say that the Kent Narrows Development Foundation has been providing us with comments and questions, and have been helping us to closely identify areas where sections of this plan should be updated, and the board members have attended numerous meetings, and we are still working with them on this fact. We have a meeting scheduled for late next week to continue those technical analyses. So we wanted to just assure everyone that this is still very much a working draft, but we wanted to make sure that before we get too far into it, we are able to hear and address any comments or questions that you may have in relation to those more technical nuances that we're still updating. Similar to the other planning areas, that sewer capacity and APFO limitations are discussed in this section, in this plan, and will continue to be. And again, we are going to be working on that again after we have that countywide discussion, which again will take place later this month. But in the discussions that we've had, both with the visioning sessions, our special topic workshops, sessions with the Kent Narrows board, everyone who's been involved, really some high level items have come out of those discussions, and those again, in some cases can be echoed with ones in the other planning areas as well as the county at large. So we're having conversations about property redevelopments and really what might be done or what might be needed to help properties redevelop that may need to be for a variety of reasons, whether they are abandoned, underdeveloped, or have some limitation. But wanting to tie that in with any sewer or APFO limitations that may be out there. A strong comment that we've heard throughout the discussions related to Kent Narrows are that we, both we in working on the plan and the community at large, need to continue to highlight and see the importance of the water-based heritage of the community, the working waterfronts, the watermen, the tourism, and just all of those amenities that really spring from that water-based heritage nature. That ties in with some of the various niche markets and tourism opportunities. So there, of course, being more of a waterfront community, there are opportunities for different types of business markets than there might be in a more landlocked, primarily agricultural area of the community. And what are those markets? How might both the planning area and the county take advantage of some of those distinctions? And when we're talking about tourism, it's not just people coming to visit Kent Narrows, to go to one of the attractions, or to stop in for at one of the restaurants, or things like that, but also again, trying to take advantage of the people that are traveling through this area, both in a vehicle as well as by water, and what does that mean for the Kent Narrows area itself. We've had discussions about, again, connectivity, the pedestrian and bicycle facilities, both within the community and connections to neighboring communities. One of the big items of discussion is that of parking and the challenges of parking currently, as well as in the future, both traditional parking, but then also sort of the park and ride lots and what that impact has. And then again, also not just vehicular parking, but also boat parking, if you will, and just those different issues that arise from it being a heavily water-based area. And that ties in with the numerous marinas and all of their amenities, which of course, we're updating that information so that there is a clear inventory of what is available and what may be needed in some of those areas. And then this is getting a little bit more into the recommendation section, but that plan currently has a discussion of design and architectural guidelines as well as gateway enhancements. So we're wanting to continue those components, just sort of sprucing them up and addressing any current issues or thoughts to make them as up to date as possible.
One other thing I want to highlight there with these different elements of issues is that balance of the relationship between full-time residents and business owners, the seasonal occupation and people living during the seasons, and then the tourist element, which could be a weekend or week rental or whatever, and really trying to balance those facilities because, we've heard a lot on the concerns and conflicts of, our local residents can't get there because all the parking's taken up by the tourists on the weekend, and we still want to visit those establishments, and really working through that balance of the different elements here is one of the key things here with this community plan.
So I wanted to, again, just briefly stop here and see if you had any initial comments or questions about this, about the Kent Narrows plan itself.
I think you've done a good job of explaining it and putting it on paper. Of course, the paper's a lot more in depth. Do we have any questions? Comments?
And I just wanted to stress that, of course, we are still continuing those technical reviews. So we will.
I know, it's our nighttime reading.
Sometimes mine too. So we will continue to incorporate the technical reviews and responses to that. So you'll see that in the next round of revisions, not only for this plan, but for the other sections that are in development. So with that, we are moving on to just this brief overview of next steps. So as we discussed a little earlier, we do have that land use workshop, which includes the priority preservation or the agricultural piece, coming up Tuesday evening, the 15th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Again, that is going to still be offered as the virtual workshop as they all have been in the past, but there is that in-person viewing option at the Sellersville Fire Hall. We do have all the connection information is available on the project website. It's being circulated throughout with our communications and with the county. So there are a variety of different ways to find that particular piece of information. And then, of course, later this month, on the 24th, we have scheduled the special meeting before this commission to discuss in the environment and community facilities chapters. Again, that's where we will have more of that discussion about the water resources elements and what the capacity issues may be. And then at your next regularly scheduled meeting on July 8th, we will have the discussion of the land use chapter, which includes that priority or agricultural preservation piece as well as implementation. And then this question was brought up last month about when is the full draft going to be ready. So our goal is that once we have the meeting with you all for that land use and implementation piece, we are then going to finalize all of those sections and components and incorporate any remaining comments that we've heard, both from the commission, public, staff, the committees and whatnot, and compile that draft for your review. This is right now tentatively proposed for the August meeting, where we will have that full draft available. And then if you are in agreement, we would be looking to open that draft for written testimony and public hearing before this board, before this commission.
We'll have it in our packet the 2 weeks before,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. You will definitely have that available. And
Wanted to
then,
make sure I had enough reading.
and then, so that would really start that, the public review piece, which is where we would submit the draft to the state clearinghouse, have a 60-day comment period, and then we would be looking to both receive any comments from any of the state agencies, the general public, anyone else who has outstanding comments, incorporate them with some recommendations. And we're hoping to schedule a joint meeting both with the Planning Commission and the County Commissioners, where we can give an overall project update and as well as an overview of the comments that have been received during that time. Now, this is really intended to be an update, so we're not looking for formal discussion at that point. Just wanted to clarify the intent of that joint meeting, and then. Of course, the commission would have would schedule and hold a public hearing on the plan itself, and assuming that you all are in agreement, a recommendation would be made to the county commissioners to adopt the plan. So when it goes to the county commissioners, they would also have a public hearing after the plan is introduced, and then the commissioners would have the option to either adopt the plan in whole, adopt it in part, or to return it to the Planning Commission with instructions for taking another look at particular items. So I just wanted to...
A question,
yes.
Just so I'm clear, that the input, and I think Amy did a great job talking about the comparison to the other plans. I've done 2 of these. Both of those were in Anne Arundel County, which had very low participation, which was my concern in the beginning. The part of special interest, how do you neutralize, when you get small special pieces put together? That'll be addressed maybe on the 24th or another piece of this. I mean, you don't have to address it specifically, but sometimes the most vocal voices are those who have a dog in the fight, and the rest of the people really don't think that that's a top priority for the county to be addressing. And I assume that you'll be able to weed those points out for discussion.
We have...
Yeah, I was going to say it's always a tough process because you're going through it, and like you say, sometimes you do hear from those that are most interested, and those that feel things are good may not weigh in as much. We try to balance that with the comments, and that's what's been good with, I think, the outreach effort we've been doing to date as well. it's actually funny, through the virtual environment, we mentioned this before, I think we've gotten more comments in some of that than we have even that you get at a public meeting or a in-person meeting, because a lot of times in person you also get the, Lauren, can I come talk to you? And you get those small groups, and you may not get the full comment that you get. So we've gotten a good amount there. We try and balance that working with the technical committee as well as with the staff, with the county, on, are these things that you're hearing through your normal day-to-day activities? Are these is anything out of line? Or is this this is something we've heard before, we know this is a key issue, or wait, that's a new issue we haven't heard. So we'll have those at the technical committee discussions and others to try and balance as best we can. But we also want to take everybody's comments into consideration and not rule out, because there are a lot of good things that have come up that may not have been heard. So we've tried to put those in front of you in the chapters and here in these sessions, so that also if you are hearing something that seems a little, I haven't heard that before, wait, where's that coming from? Please raise that to us from your side, and we can go into sort of where we heard it or what group it's come from.
And then the other part was on in reading the report on Graysonville and Chester and others, when they look at economic growth in their areas, I mean, some areas are skipped over. I mean, they don't have the vitality, they don't have the identity. Will the report address some of the incentives being done by other jurisdictions that may be transferable into, those particular areas, or maybe into the county, as to attracting businesses, attracting, incentives, or what other areas have done that have been successful in order for that growth to be what will truly take hold? And if we have to make a zoning change, or we have to make some other accommodation from the county level, what they may actually incorporate into that piece.
And some of those are items that we are, of course, collaborating with the Economic Development Department,
Right.
on some of their efforts, and then at a broader countywide level. But then also, again, a balancing act between how to encourage that economic growth and development with any limitations that there might be, whether that is environmental or capacity or something like that. So it's definitely a balancing
your parking
act.
point is usually the one that gets not properly addressed. I mean, parking cyclical, and it takes a lot of space up, and it's typically impervious surface, which is impact upon the environment, and all the other ripples that go through that process. But that's a big issue that keeps coming up.
I think one, to get to maybe a specific example, and it's probably a little bit of a change from what was available in 2010, was now that you all are part of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, BMC, as part of the MPO, and the inclusion there. And there's some things we're highlighting and putting in there that does open opportunities for certain parts of the county that back in 2010, when you were not part of that group, they weren't there. So
Is it good to be a part of that group, or not good to be a part of that group?
I'll leave that to your own judgment. Everybody has their opinion. No, but the opportunities that you get from that there are some other funding opportunities and things that come out. So we make sure that, that language is updated with this update, so that those could be looked at and considered, that you may not have had an opportunity in the past for some of those areas. So those are the things we just want to make sure are in the update, so that people are aware and then can continue to look to see where or how they can apply that to those specific areas and areas of need.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then just to end things, we just, again, wanted to stress, if you do have any additional thoughts or comments or questions on these chapters or any of the ones that we've had previously, we are getting close to the end of the draft chapter phase of this. So please send those either to me, to Stephanie, and we can coordinate those to make sure that your comments get addressed, hopefully before we get to that full draft plan section, at least the larger issues that you may want to see incorporated.
Okay, Any public comment on the comp plan workshop? Any questions? There being none, we will go for the general public comments. Any public comment? We have anything on the,
Nothing virtual unless Nancy would like to speak, but I think she was just here to watch.
okay.
Oh, he certainly looks like he wants to come up here. I don't know what's stopping him. Jody.
Did you want to say something? Am I going to regret this?
Gigi and I were going to flip a coin to see who came up. So Jody Schultz, chairman of the Kent Narrows Development Foundation. So I think they laid it out pretty good on what we're doing, and we're excited about and glad that everybody agreed that the Kent Narrows plan would kind of stay its own thing. So we've had a few meetings. We're in constant discussions. It's a draft, so and they were clear about this is a draft. There's still some stuff to get straight in it, and at some point we were a little bit unclear about maybe the scope of work that they were charged with.
Are you clear today, after today's meeting?
I don't know if I am or not, but we don't want to. We're selfish about our plan. I mean, we're.
So their job basically is just to gather all the information and present it.
Yeah, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is they're charged with a scope, and we might be digging outside of their scope in our plan. So I just want to be.
Let's get back on the train.
Yeah. It's a big train, yeah.
Yep.
So we just want to be sure that we're not maybe trying to request or do more than what maybe they're expecting to do in their scope. Because the Chester-Stevensville and the Graysonville plans, there's no, the old Chester-Stevensville, Graysonville groups aren't there to nitpick like we are with the Kent Narrows plan. Is it my articulating that right? So we're just, again, we're just really looking and dissecting the plan because that was our baby in '06. It's 15 years later, it's still our baby. And we're still, maybe,
Well, aren't you supposed to be looking at what worked and what doesn't work and
yeah, we are. Yeah.
and throw out what doesn't work and
That's what we're
continue from
doing.
there.
But like I said, if they're, if they're charged with fixing the car and not rebuilding it,
Right.
so to speak, with whatever their scope is, that's all. But I mean, we're working with them. They're
That's the
working
goal.
back, and yeah.
If I could just add on that real quick, the one thing is, we're really trying, and we really appreciate the comments we're getting, working with the group, is to try and consolidate really what those comments are. And then as we are doing the update and incorporating, if we're seeing things that aren't, then we can have that further discussion of what or why and how it related to the scope. Or some of them may be issues or items that become our, we talk about these sort of the implementation recommendation pieces that come together at the end of the chapters. There may be elements in there that would become something in that later would be something to be addressed moving forward if it's not resolved as part of this effort. But that's the part of that discussion, just like we talk with the other chapters, even when it comes to transportation or something, there may be some recommendations or elements to move forward based on where we are with the update. And I think that's the best way we can address handling what's in our task versus what additional things, because, we know you have a vested interest and there's specific and sometimes more detailed elements than what we're getting into at the comprehensive plan level. And we can work to identify what applies and what may need other action moving forward, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, we're a special taxing district, so that in itself kind of changes things a little bit. And we're always applying, and Gigi's always applying for grants. So the grant application a lot of them are very specific about what they want, and which is a good updated plan. And that plan has to have updated information, census, financial, all this stuff that, and if you miss one of those checkoffs, it's not updated or correctly in the information that they require, you kind of miss the opportunity for the grants. And that's a big thing for us, is grants and things we're trying to do that pertain to, you know, everything from trails to you know, everything else that we're trying to do. So, and we'll get all that information. I mean, we're very confident we will. Amy's, you know, we're all working together. We've got another, at least one good meeting scheduled, so.
So I think if I'm understanding what you're saying is that, and what I'm thinking is the implementation the piece of the chapter really is where it's going to get down to the nitty gritty, and you can at that point say, well, you know, our grant funders are going to require this, and this is going to conflict with
Sure,
that.
this is up to date. Make
Right,
sure
right,
that.
right. So, like right now, it's more of a generalized plan, but I think that the specifics will come at that piece of the process. I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of things that may not go hand in hand with your plan and the requirements. So I get that. So.
Yeah. And we're, you know, land and water, and again, I'm confident we're going to get there. So that's all that matters. At the end of the day, where everybody's happy with the plan.
Yeah.
And a year from now, we're not, you know, we've got a good plan all over. So Ken Ayers is just going to still be a piece of that. You're going to have one plan, and we're just a piece of that.
Maybe part of the overall update, yes.
Yeah. Good.
Evidently, Gigi has something to add to what, because evidently you didn't do a good job.
Well, I told her to come up here to start with. She can tell you, she can clean up everything I just said. So.
Good morning or afternoon, I'm not sure. Georgiana Winley, Executive Director, Kent Narrows Development Foundation. And I echo everything Jody said. I want to compliment all the work that, the back and forth work that we've been doing with Wallace and Montgomery. And I just wanted to just add to Jody's comments to make it clear that sequencing for us is a bit of an issue, which means that our community, more than almost any community over the past 10 years, has changed more than almost any area. And so that makes it a little bit more complicated for us to get our census data, our marina surveys, all of that background data that will go into making intelligent decisions with this plan. So that's why we're a little bit behind, I would say, with this, because there's so much change that has happened. So that requires a lot more information. The last thing I wanted to also bring up is that census data for 2020 is a lot of it's just rolling out. I mean, the housing data just rolled out at the end of May. So the timing with that, we would love to get the updated census data in, especially for housing, because we're discussing the census data right now, and some things don't look right. So we want to make sure we get it right. And so those are my comments. So thank you.
Okay. Guess that's it for today.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Any public comment on any other issues? I think I might be looking for my favorite
Motion to adjourn.
motion.
Motion
That's
to
the
adjourn.
one.
I think so.
Any seconds?